Hey yo, we bringing you the international vibe live from Brownsville, where we juggle and struggle to survive. You know the deal. We grind from 12 to 12, steaming in the cut on the corner by the bodega with the hammer steaming. Wait, forgive him for his sins. You better watch us.
I think poetry is so much like philosophy because they're both really concerned with truth. You know, poetry really makes the truth available to our hearts, and I think philosophy makes the truth more secure in our minds, which is tricky and dangerous because you can make an error secure in your mind and you're just embedding dogma, you know. So philosophy is not for everyone, and philosophy is not practical, and it shouldn't be. And if it starts to be too practical and be too comfortable in this sense, it probably needs to be replaced or destroyed or embarrassed. I got into philosophy largely from an interest in politics. You know, I've had a certain level of passion for politics. In some ways, an angry black man, and I want to see justice for my people. So that's one element of it, but I'm also an intellectual, and I had a hunger for certain questions. When I was an undergraduate at Brandeis University, the big question that I really pursued with a lot of heart was the question of, well, what is the philosophical significance of need? And it was apparent to me that there's something in the nature of something being needed that gave a certain kind of value and importance and could give order to human social life, right? And that there's this holistic thing I was also interested in. There's a way that we respond to people's needs once we're aware of them. And there's a compassion and a beauty in human being that has to do with me being able to bridge the boundary of the self, of the individuality of the person in responding to someone else's need. You know, and there's a way in which that cements our social being, you know. And so when I look at human society, I see what Saul Williams talks about as the Holy Trinity, as being at the center of human being. And so Saul Williams, who is a rapper and a poet, and he's also son of a minister, makes this powerful point that in Christianity, we are taught that the Holy Trinity is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And there's a very natural Holy Trinity of the Father, the Mother, and the child. Not the Son, the child. You know, so there's this incredible engine of ingenuity that nature has. It brings together two similar but different members of a species with different genetic profiles, and they combine in such a way to always create another totally original and special individual. And the mammalian human way of being is one where, yes, we are individuals, but we're deeply linked. You know, we're deeply linked, and we're social. We're social and we're political, and we can't sustain our being as individuals. So when I went to graduate school, after really pursuing this issue, this concept of need, and coming up with some ideas about it, why it's relevant and how it can help in ordering social life. The big question that I was interested in is communication, is discourse, and Habermas's theory. And one of the first papers that I wrote that I ended up developing into my master's thesis was a paper in ethics called Monolithic Individualism. And I was kind of obsessed with the way Western philosophy seemed to always emphasize individuality in a way that I thought was destructive of social being. You know, so we elevate an interest in self to this place where it's out of balance with our interests in others, and which undermines social cohesion and political optimism, and it's problematic in many ways. And so that was huge for me, monolithic individualism, and I went on to write, my master's thesis was 2 fallacies of self-conception. And so the problem of how you conceive of the self as this monolithic individual as opposed to what I think is really more real, which is this, as I described it just a little while ago, that we have this singular nature, but with these 2 polarities. We are human beings, and what that means is that we need a certain amount of independence, but we also need a certain amount of sociality. And we really can't do without both. You know, if we just become herd-like and just go along with the group all the time, we lose some of our humanity. Yet if we're on the other end and we're these egoistic, self-seeking, self-calculating uber individuals, we also become less human. So to be human is to maintain this tension that's there, that we feel in our nature, of needing to be alone, right? And craving people. You know, I mean, there's sex, and there's like just the simple joy and happiness of being with people, where you are relieved of your individuality and get to revel in your sociality. I mean, having sex and being with friends, losing your sense of being a one and being really part of a dynamic whole, something greater than you, is a grounding experiences. What I've been formulating as a theory is what I call the gift conception of the person. Okay? And so I want to understand and theorize the sense in which we are deeply social. And so I say, let's think about the person not in terms of objective conditions that we can identify that make you what you are and that enable re-identification. Instead, let's think about the person in a social frame, and let's ask, what does identity mean in a social frame? Well, in a social frame, identity means distinctness and differentiation. So in a group, what it means to be an individual is to have traits that mark you as distinct. Okay? And so from the standpoint of social being, okay, we are for each other gifts, in the sense of something not fully known that has value, that unfolds, and has a positive benefit in your life. What we look for from each other is gifting, something we can give, and we get a great deal of satisfaction giving ourselves, right? I think of social as the target, and I think of politics as the way of changing the society. So you have a way that things are, and then politics moves the social. That's how I tend to think of the 2 concepts. And so I think there's quite a few things that are exciting, that are getting political challenge in our social organization. One huge thing is marriage. This whole thing about allowing different kinds of marriage. I think it brings it's a nexus for questioning all kinds of things that have incredible revolutionary potential. I think that our identities are being rethought and reconfigured in exciting ways. I think that people are tired of talking about identity, and it's good. It shows, again, emotional resistance to rational thought and engagement. So people will resist it, but you can't stop it. It's going to keep happening, and people are going to have to confront and answer deep questions about who the fuck they are, right? And it's going to be exciting. I mean, where we also have external demands on our action, our political action, that will become increasingly undeniable. You know, and people are going to have to just step up to the plate and deal with it. And we're going to see some really impressive stuff happen in the next years. You know, it's going to be crazy, but we're going to see some impressive stuff happen because people are going to step up hard and strong. Out of necessity. You know, it's not like we live in a heroic age. It's just going to be that the age will require heroism. What I was thinking about is, you know, our consuming of fossil fuels and how we got to get off of that, and we have to change our economy. I mean, this is huge, you know, and people resisting it to hell. It's ridiculous, right? I mean, people are still driving their cars. Slowly but surely, you see more people getting on their bikes, you know. Yeah, they need to be pushed big time. You know, the writing's been on the wall for so long, and still, you know, you gotta be like this. Get out your car, you know. And so yeah, there's all kind. My answer is one. First and foremost, we have engaged identity politics, and we've prepared ourselves to make bold moves in the sphere of culture and identity and really transform ourselves. We can stop being these narrow, limited people and embrace our intersectionality, the way in which we're many different things. And if we can live through that, we'll have a stronger future because people will be more imbricated and they'll be more empowered with a language of talking about difference in themselves. So they'll be able to embrace more complicated landscapes and they'll smooth it out instead of being stopped by it. Complication stops a lot of people where it shouldn't. It doesn't need to. They're just on a trip, you know. So I really feel that we have intersectional identities now, so common, and it's so hard to avoid it, that's going to be something that's going to be a resource for us getting to a next stage in politics.
We your rhyme sayers who lead you like a beacon of light out of the chaos, cutting down overzealous players who stay when the winners of the game walking well prepared, climbing the stairways to heaven while you scared of the people living under ground. Heard the sound of the clap, made you wonder if it was a gun, the crowd, or some thunder. All of that was out my window when I was younger. Now I'm much older, lyrically clapping seeds. If you don't know by now, let me acquaint you with my steeds.